Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into the internet's absolute favorite, and probably most misunderstood, conspiracy theory, Area 51. I'm literally so excited to walk you through this because, honestly, the real story here, it's way more fascinating than the sci-fi rumors. So, let's peel back the layers of this giant myth and separate the actual grounded history from the wild, out there fiction. Let's rewind to the summer of 2019. Picture this, a staggering 2 million people RSVPing to a joke Facebook event called Storm Area 51, They Can't Stop All of Us. It was literally started by a college student as a complete prank while playing video games. I mean, the event even suggested people do the Naruto run, that leaning forward sprint from the anime, to somehow outrun military bullets. It spread like wildfire, mutating into this absolute monstrosity of an internet meme. It got so big, so fast, that the creator actually had to publicly beg the US government not to arrest him. Wild, right?
But to really grasp the pure absurdity of this whole thing, you have to compare those 2 million internet RSVPs with the actual real-world population of Rachel, Nevada in 2019. 54. Just 54 people. Rachel is this tiny, completely isolated village right next to Area 51. And the base itself? It's sitting in the middle of a massive 12,000 square kilometer expanse of absolutely brutal desert where summer temps casually sit above 40 degrees Celsius. There are no gas stations, no infrastructure. The sheer logistical nightmare of dumping 2 million people out there really highlights just how completely divorced from reality the whole Area 51 myth had become.
All right, let's look at the origins of this myth. Section 1, the Roswell incident. Things spiraled out of control incredibly fast back in 1947. First, you have private pilot Kenneth Arnold, who accidentally sparked a nationwide craze when he spotted 9 shiny, crazy fast objects in the sky. Then, just a few weeks later, a local farmer named Mac Brazel stumbles across some weird tinfoil and rubber debris in his field. And then, the US Army makes an absolutely massive misstep. They actually put out a press release claiming they'd captured a flying disc. I mean, what were they thinking? Because literally the very next day, they completely retract it, awkwardly posing for photos with pieces of a weather balloon. That incredibly rapid flip-flop, that hit the nail on the head for public distrust, planting seeds that would grow for decades. So, why was the government acting so incredibly suspiciously? Well, that brings us to Section 2, the Cold War cover-up. Spoiler alert here, it wasn't aliens. Back in 1954, President Eisenhower desperately needed a top-secret location to test high-altitude spy planes to keep tabs on the Soviet Union's nuclear program. So the CIA hunts down this vast, totally dried-up lakebed in Nevada called Groom Lake, which is what we now call Area 51. By 1955, they are out there testing the legendary U-2 spy plane, and it was a massive success. Until 1960, when pilot Francis Gary Powers got shot down by a Soviet missile. That one event completely wiped out years of hard-won secrecy, and it basically forced the US military back to the drawing board to build something even faster and even stealthier.
When you actually look at the altitude differences between these aircraft, it's just staggering. So a standard passenger jet cruises somewhere between 10,000 and 20,000 meters, right? Now compare that to the U-2 spy plane, which was flying way up at 21,000 meters. And then look at its successor, the SR-71 Blackbird. That thing was soaring at an astonishing 26,000 meters, going 3,400 kilometers per hour. With that extreme height and sheer speed, it honestly makes perfect sense why people on the ground were so deeply confused. I mean, they were looking up and seeing what looked like impossible objects doing entirely impossible things.
And that extreme altitude created the absolute perfect optical illusion. It basically birthed the modern UFO sighting. Picture this. The military liked to run these flight tests right before sunset. Because these unconventional planes were flying at extreme altitudes, like 26,000 meters, the setting sun's rays would catch their silver fuselages, so they'd be up there shining brightly while the ground below was already completely dark in the twilight. If you're just an everyday person looking up at the evening sky, those things looked exactly like glowing, unearthly flying saucers.
So the crucial takeaway here is that those famous early incidents, they were entirely earthly. Remember that Roswell crash debris from 1947? Well, in 1994, the US Air Force finally came clean. It wasn't an alien ship, but it wasn't exactly a simple weather balloon either. Actually, it was a device from Project Mogul. This was a highly classified nuclear surveillance program that used specialized high-altitude balloons to literally detect the sound waves from Soviet atomic tests from across the globe. The government lied, for sure, but they were lying to protect their nuclear surveillance tech, not to hide ET in the desert. And the CIA employed a seriously brilliant, albeit passive, strategy here. To maintain total secrecy around their Cold War weapons development, they realized that UFO conspiracy theories were, well, incredibly convenient. When people started calling in reports of flying saucers, the CIA didn't bother denying it, but they didn't reveal the truth either. They happily sat back and allowed the public to believe in aliens, because it meant absolutely nobody was figuring out the real truth, that America was testing next-generation military spy planes right over their heads. But wait, if the real truth came out in 1994, why on earth did the alien myth explode all over again? Let's get into Section 3, the Bob Lazar effect. You literally can't talk about Area 51 without talking about Bob Lazar. He became this massive cult figure after going on huge platforms like Joe Rogan's podcast, making the wild claim that he was a government contractor tasked with reverse engineering alien spacecraft at a secret sector called S4. But, well, here's the reality check. Neutral experts investigated Lazar's background and found that he entirely fabricated his official credentials. He claimed he did confidential research at MIT, and he used that as the excuse for why there are zero records of his enrollment. Actually, scratch that. It wasn't just hidden, it was completely made up. He even went as far as claiming that these alien ships ran on a magical anti-gravity fuel called Element 115, which he said produced its own gravitational field. And, that sounds like amazing sci-fi, until you realize that in 2003, actual Russian scientists synthesized Element 115, which is now officially called Moscovium. And guess what? It has absolutely zero anti-gravity properties. None. So, this massive modern resurgence of the Area 51 alien myth, it was largely built on the totally fabricated claims of a conspiracy theorist. But people are still seeing unexplained things in the sky today, right? Which brings us to Section 4, the truth about UAPs. First off, you're probably noticing a massive shift in vocabulary here. The government pretty much refuses to use the term UFO, unidentified flying object, anymore. Why? Because it carries way too much heavy baggage. It's too associated with little green men. Instead, the official Department of Defense term is now UAP, or Unidentified Aerial Phenomena. And listen, an unidentified object simply means exactly that. We just don't know what it is yet. It absolutely does not mean it flew in from another galaxy. Honestly, it's genuinely surprising how transparent the government has been forced to become recently. In 2013, the CIA finally officially acknowledged Area 51's location on a map, all thanks to a Freedom of Information Act request. Then, between 2017 and 2021, millions of pages of CIA records were just dumped online for the public. In 2020, the Pentagon went as far as authenticating 3 leaked videos taken by military pilots, confirming that the UAPs in the footage were completely real. They even established an official UAP task force, treating this as a serious national security issue. Just listen to this quote from military officials. They admit that while a lot of incidents get classified as weather balloons or sensor glitches, there are others where there's just not enough data to determine what they are. The U.S. military openly acknowledges that there are aerial phenomena flying around out there that they simply cannot identify. But here's the catch. They don't view these as visitors from outer space. They view them as highly classified drone or aircraft programs developed by rival nations. And that brings us to the final and honestly most unsettling question we have to ask ourselves as we wrap up this explainer. The truth of Area 51 is that it was and still is a testing ground for cutting-edge, top-secret military aviation. The whole aliens thing, it was just a super convenient smokescreen for the Cold War. But if the government is actively tracking highly advanced, unexplainable aerial phenomena right now, and they aren't extraterrestrial, then whose next-generation military technology are we actually looking at?